Hello. I'm here with Kyle Whalum, who is we're just talking about how busy this man is. He does so many awesome things that I'm stoked to talk to him about. Things that I don't think we've talked about on the podcast yet that I know are near and dear to my heart as well as his heart, although he's a badass and I'm just trying to catch up. But Kyle is a bass player, tours with Kelly Clarkson. He's done a lot of stuff. I was looking up your discography today. He's played on a lot of amazing records. And not only that, is he's an ultra marathoner, meaning he runs not only marathons, but like 4 of them at one time. And he's one of the things that I really dig about Kyle, that doing some more research on what you're doing too, specifically, is some of your initiatives about being healthy on the road. Mm-hmm. And I really want to talk a lot about that and your kind of philosophy on that, because I know that you came from a place where you're pretty open about it. Mm-hmm. You came from a place where you were smoking, where you were drinking a lot and all that kind of stuff. And I definitely want to dive into that. But before we do that, you grew up in Nashville.
Yep.
And was bass kind of your first thing?
No. So I moved here in 1996 from Los Angeles. So, I want to say I grew up in LA, and then I don't want to say that because it's not true. And, I came here when I was 12, and I really grew up here. I was a kid when I got here, went to high school, went to college, found a wife, made kids. Like, all of those things happened in Nashville. So, I definitely claim Nashville. So gosh, it's been 23 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you grew up kind of on this side of town too, right? Like out
in Bellevue. So it's kind of like
it change a little bit.
I have, yes, because further down the road. By the way, I went to Bellevue Middle School, which is you can almost see it right there. Yeah. For 8th grade, and I was super bummed out because it was such a big change coming here from Los Angeles, like sort of an it city, and that's all I knew. And my dad was, a popular musician, and so he had this crazy circle and blah, blah, blah. And when we moved to Nashville, all my friends were starting to make like hick jokes and moved in, because this is 96. Nashville wasn't a cool city yet, like in the eyes of LA or New York or whatever. Yeah. So when I was in 8th grade here, I was pretty bummed out, but slowly started making friends. I got into skateboarding. I remember this kid, Jonathan LeMay, had a Alien Workshop skateboard. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was cool. I was like, oh, that'll get me some girls. Yeah. And so I started skateboarding. But music was starting to creep in. My first instrument when I was young was violin. And I did the Suzuki method. And to be honest, I really, really hated that. I just hated everything about it. I hated the structure. I found when I was just playing it on my own in my room, I was having fun. Mm-hmm. That was kind of cool. But I didn't like the sort of rigidity. And so when we moved here, I quit that, and got into visual art. And when I moved here, I want to say it was drums that I was really interested first. And my dad was buddies with someone we both know, Chester Thompson. Mm-hmm. And Chester gave me a couple drum lessons, and, I started to kind of go that route. But we lived in an apartment while our house was being built. And so you couldn't have a drum set in the apartment. Still needed to exercise my creativity a little bit. So I started getting into guitar. I heard about Jimi Hendrix and was kind of like, that really blew me away at an early age, like this crazy psychedelic black rock star guy.
Mm-hmm, of course. Yeah.
Which, the likes of whom we really haven't seen since. You have Prince and Kravitz, but Jimmy was such an alien, Yeah. And I got into guitar, and that didn't really set right either, because you have these 4/4. This is a musical podcast, right?
Mm-hmm, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so you have 4/4 going across the neck, and then all of a sudden there's this third out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. And then another 4th. And that I didn't like that. I tried to be soloing and stuff, and you'd have to flip the scales to be weird. So bottom line is I settled on bass guitar in high school because I was playing guitar in jazz band, and our bass player dropped out. And
Richard, it always kind of happens that way, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's it was like a calling.
Yeah, of course.
And Richard Griffin was my band director from National School of the Arts. Great dude.
Yeah.
Yep. And he was like, okay, so look, we had 3 guitar players. And he's like, so as you guys know, Nate dropped out. Who's handy on bass? And I just lied. I was like, I don't know where it came from. I was like, oh, I am. And he's like, okay, well, the bass is in the closet. Go get it. And he's like...
Was it upright first, or was it...
No, it was electric.
Electric, okay.
Yeah, I think it was a 5-string Tobias, I think. And he was like, all right, man. And he doesn't play, Mm-hmm. So he's like, all right, well... come back tomorrow, have all your scales down. I was like, oh, shoot. So I stayed up all night. I'd never even played a bass before. Yeah. But I did notice when I was playing it, for some reason, I came back in and I had my scales. I could alternate properly. All that stuff really just like it was in me already. It's really kind of odd how natural bass was, and that it's a problem to this day because I don't really practice unless I have something to work on.
Yeah, of course.
Because it just feels so natural. I don't. And I'm not saying that's good or bad. I probably should practice more. But.
Well, I mean, you come from. I mean, obviously, your father is Kirk Whalum, who's an incredible saxophone player. Who I've being a saxophone player, I followed him for quite some time. So having you sitting here is super cool.
Yeah,
I could imagine. I mean, just to play kind of like an interesting perspective on that. Like, did you find it difficult growing up with him? I mean, your dad is awesome. You know,
yeah,
and
he's
I'm
the
sure,
man.
and you guys have done lots of beautiful things together. But it's like when you have a father that's that, and you come into the music scene. Like, was that a difficult thing for you to kind of be in?
Yeah. I think I always kind of identified with famous people's kids. You know what I mean? So like Danny Harrison or what's Coltrane's daughter?
Well, I mean, his son
and his son
has been in. I don't know what his daughter's name.
But you know what I'm saying? Like
Ravi's been totally in a difficult spot for sure because he picked up tenor too and wanted to do the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or you know, Felix Pastorius.
Of course, yeah.
Or Sean Lennon, who's actually Sean Lennon is a brilliant songwriter. Musician.
Oh man, his records are great.
Yeah, they're deep. Yeah. They're great. But I always identified with people like that on a much smaller scale because you are stepping into like tremendously big shoes and. I think even at an early age, I was aware of that, you know. I think that's maybe why at first I didn't want to get into music at all. So I wanted to do visual art. I was into like animation.
Yeah, you mentioned that. About, yeah.
And then, and I kind of, when we moved to Nashville, I kind of felt almost like I was compelled to get into music because there's nothing else to do. So then I was
especially
like, okay.
In 1996.
In 96, right. Because like downtown Nashville was just like porn stores and Shoney's.
I've heard it was rough.
Yeah, it was.
East Side was like no joke.
East Side was not even like,
you just don't go there.
No, you don't go there. And then the tornado happened and all these artists moved there and it turned into what it is.
Oh, really?
Now.
That's cool. I didn't know that history. I have to look that up.
But yeah, for sure. I struggle with that then. Sometimes I struggle with it now, although the further I progress into my career and I think now, you know, there's more mutual admiration from both of us, you know what I mean? And all that stuff is in my head. It was never
it's
Kirk
funny how that works.
Yeah. Kirk is proud as you can be, you know. And I think also a big fan of my musicianship, but
I saw him sit in. He sat in with you with Kelly. Was that a couple weeks back or something like that?
Yeah,
I saw that video, man.
Yeah, like a week and a half or 2 weeks
super
ago. It was super dope.
He owned it too, man. Like he walked around as he always does.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
That was one of the things that people in Kelly's camp were stoked about. Was they're like, man, did you see his stance? Like just the way he came in.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, he's the man. I'm telling you, you know, he's like a rock star on saxophone.
Yeah.
And we did. We had John Legend sit in earlier in the tour to sing a duet that he had recorded on one of Kelly's records. And we play this song every night, but my buddy DR King sings it from The Voice.
DR. Awesome. Cool.
DR's dope. And he's also like in the band. But to have John come up and do it, noticing John's, we all were just amazed at his posture before we went on. He just looked like an action figure. And when the lights hit him, he was John Legend. He was ready to go. You know, it's like, that's the thing that I think the greats all have. Even if they're we're all artists, so we're all insecure. You know what I mean? That's like across the board. I'm pretty positive, unless you're a narcissist.
Yeah.
And even then, you're probably still super insecure. But
yeah.
I feel like you know, to be able to overcome the insecurity for the moment in front of the crowd and to be a performer and be excellent, like that's what we do. You know, I think I do the same thing. Is I grapple with my own, you know, anxieties and insecurities on a daily basis. It's always a roller coaster, but when it's time to go up and play, I'm able to get into this other zone and be an extrovert all of a sudden. When in real life, I'm very introverted. I love running in the woods by myself for hours and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, actually, I see you on the trail sometimes, and we're both, hey man, how you doing? We catch up real quick, and then
I'm with you, man. I need to be it's my zone.
Yeah,
time, you know, for
yeah.
sure.
I think we all need that.
Yeah. I think we almost passed the other today. I saw on your Instagram that you're out at Edwin. I went to Percy.
Okay, yeah.
You're like, hey man, let's 3 is good, and I'm like, great. That gives me time to
go get a run in. Absolutely. What did you hit?
I just did the stairs.
Oh yeah,
there. Yeah.
I need to go. Miles, I need to do that, man. You said 5 miles.
Just
worth
5 today. Yeah.
Jeez.
But it was. I mean, it's all you can do. It's been raining so much.
Yes.
It's brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, the trails are just beat to crap.
Yeah, they're trash.
Yeah, it's
trash.
hard. I mean, I mean, I definitely want to talk about running, but man, I was training for that. I was going to do a marathon in Vancouver, the first one. I've never done one, in May. And, different immigration things happened where I wasn't able to go.
Oh, that's
so I didn't able to do it. But man, I got to like the 16, 17 mile mark of being on pavement again. Mm-hmm. Dude, my legs were hard. Screw you.
Yeah,
and I was like, I almost was a blessing that I didn't have to keep going in that kind of that mileage to do that run, because I went right back to trails and I was like, I'm good now.
Yeah, exactly.
Man,
there's something about it. I think it's what we're meant to be, the surface we're meant to be running on.
On that dirt and the rocks and all the different muscles that we're using. It's just, I love it. I wish I'd come to it sooner.
Me too. Because I was a road runner before I got into trails and stuff.
But, and you're still doing that out on the road a little bit too.
Yeah. I'll run whatever, dude. I'll run roads, I'll run the treadmill, I'll run stairs in the arena. If it's like one of our shows recently was like single digit temperatures, and I bring cold weather gear, so I'm not afraid to go run in the cold, but like I stepped outside and it was just some
days you just don't
ice. It was just ice all over the place. Yeah. And so I was like, well, shoot, and I did 30 minutes worth of stairs in the arena.
Nice.
So I'll take it in whatever form I can get it in, but I would prefer to be on nice, pristine, dry trails.
In California.
Next
to the ocean.
On the West Coast somewhere, Or for me, it's the mountains. I like the mountains the best.
I'm with you on that.
I'd like Banff. I would be in heaven in Banff.
Dude, yeah. But the only problem with that is I was just up there this past summer, and it's just, you have such a fine window. Like, of running time because of the weather changes.
Well, the further north you get, you're getting into like Arctic conditions, correct?
Yeah. I was there in September, and it was already pretty. Yeah. I mean, I ran, but it's like -2, -3, and that was in September.
Yeah.
So,
jeez.
Yeah, and then you get snow.
Yeah.
Once the snow falls, it's like, you don't want to run in snow. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll get into that because I want to talk about the road stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Because one of the things that was interesting. Let's go back to the idea of. One of the things that I find fascinating watching you is the thing that you own is what you just talked about, where you get on stage and you understand your role, and you are happy to live in that role. Mm-hmm. I understand that too. I mean, I do this. Like, I'm not probably as happy to live that role as you are. Like, I feel like you love that role. It's just it's I can do it if I'm getting paid enough money, but it's like not something that I like long for.
Right.
And it's fun to be up there and have that kind of bravado and like give your moment and like have your moment and do your thing. And one of the things, I've been reading some of your stuff and you're talking about that specifically. And one of the things that you said that I thought was really interesting was the way that Nashville is kind of moving in a direction of not only do you have to be a great player now, but you also have to put on the show, and how do you kind of, I mean, you've owned that and you're open about that. And there's kind of like an older guard that would look at that situation and be like, well, it doesn't matter, it's how you play. But I think for younger musicians that are listening, that are coming to Nashville, that want the gig, that want to be out with Kelly Clarkson and want to be on tour, like James Otto, I know you've done some other things. It's like they're coming here and they're looking for a touring gig because that's what this town really is, the majority of it. And there's a lot of session stuff, obviously, too. But touring is that's a great experience. Everybody should do that.
Yeah.
And so I guess advice for younger musicians about, obviously they need to be able to play, but what kind of, I mean, is there anything like how to keep a gig, how to keep things happy, like how to keep things light? Like what are things that you do personality wise and musically out there that you can kind of share to kind of be in that place?
Absolutely.
To keep them calling you again.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which is, one thing I pride myself on. I'm going to knock on your table because, I know the way the universe works, but I don't get fired a lot. I've been fired one time in 19 years and I was 19 years old and I was young and dumb. And there's some things I had to learn everything the hard way. And once I learn it the hard way, it does tend to stick. And I'll also say, I had wilder years that by the grace of God I survived, and I actually was on gigs where that was acceptable. This was like Music Mafia years where, you big and rich and those guys. And to this day, that's still part of their brand is you go out and party, and it's all good. No judgment.
I was at the Blue Bar at the tail end of that a few times and saw that kind of happen. I was right when I came to town was when they were kind of hitting.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember Blue Bar.
The Blue Bar, yeah.
Yeah, it could get fuzzy. But I don't get fired because I'm very aware. I'm almost, part of my problem is I'm too aware sometimes. Like, and on tour with Kelly, a lot of times I have to kind of shake that self-awareness a little bit to just relax, because I understand the stakes, and now I have a family, and a lot of guys want to be in that position. You know what I mean? So I'm always kind of aware of that, but I'm also, you got to keep it light and loose, and you got to have fun. You got to pick when to party, when to turn it in and get a good night's sleep. My thing, it really is all about balance. And I did an interview for Gibson Guitar. They have a publication recently, and that's what we're talking about a lot, was just that balance, you know. So there on the road, there's a time and a place. Like, first of all, very important for me to get exercise every day. It's really important for me to get out in the sun and get some vitamin D, especially when you're doing arenas, because you kind of get into this subterranean life with fluorescent bulbs, and everybody's eyes start sinking a little bit. That just helps me. Like, the drummer and I have a joke. Lester Estelle is an incredible drummer and a good friend of mine, and we have a joke about, like, it's not even a joke, but it's like, man, you gonna be great today? I'm like, yeah, man, I'm gonna go be great. You know?
I like that. That's great.
Because the idea is to wake up, do something for yourself, you know, and then come back, and I get to work. I have a whole routine, charting out like all the cover songs we're gonna do, and then we'll go to rehearsal, and then I'll slowly wean off my chart, and then we'll do a sound check. Sometimes we'll do another rehearsal with Kelly, and then we'll hit the stage. Honestly, and then my day is pretty much over, and I'll have a couple of beers and go to bed. But yeah, so I think it's just having a routine and trying to find balance out there. That's from a lifestyle perspective. As far as, you know, playing and you know, on stage energy and kind of stuff, is that kind of where you were?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, understanding that you're putting on a show.
Yeah. It is also, again, about balance there, because it's a balance then about your craft, how good you are as a player and how well you're playing, and also entertaining people, because at the end of the day, we're all entertainers, and that's what people pay their money for. And it's that fine line, man. It's a razor's edge, because there's sometimes where I'm having a fantastic show technically. There's no clams. I'm maybe playing some lines I've never played before. And if you listen to an audio recording of it, it would sound great, you know. But it actually may be kind of not a great show for everyone else. Maybe the energy in the room isn't good, or, you know, maybe, you know, Kelly's a human being. Sometimes, you know, she's feeling ill or whatever.
Course, yeah.
So there are times where you need to let go of the nerdy playing side and really just embrace, like, rocking out with the crowd and smiling and being aware of where your artist is. I'm always really, when I'm playing, I don't know when I started doing this, but I'm really focused on, I try to look towards my artist, wherever he or she is. You know what I mean? If there's someone soloing, I try to turn my attention towards them. And obviously you're still looking at your hands to play, and you have to engage pedals, and I play synth bass and all that stuff, but it's just about keeping a balance between all that stuff. Like, lately we're getting into the point in the tour where we obviously know these songs.
Yeah.
We're starting to have a lot of fun as far as, like, kind of cutting up in between, you know what I mean? Serious moments, which is something I've always really enjoyed seeing in, like, a good touring band. Like, if you go see the Tennessee Kids with, you know, Justin Timberlake, they're cutting up, like, the whole show. They're almost like they're telling jokes to each other, and they're laughing, and it's just wonderful energy. And I would say you can't have too much of that, but I think there is a balance there, you know, as far as knowing when it's fun to kind of go cut up and be silly and do inside jokes and stuff, and then when it's time to rein it back in. And you know, if Kelly's singing a beautiful ballad she's in tears and stuff, you'd be a jerk if you were in the background telling jokes. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like just reading the room is kind of the vibe.
Constantly on stage, in the dressing room, on the bus, in catering with your tech. Like, you just kind of, it's that balance of being aware and then also being a little laissez-faire and, like, easygoing and stuff. And I think all the great players have that, where it's a little bit of both happening at the same time. It's complex. It's not a simple, you know, answer. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I definitely work with some people that you look at how they handle themselves on the road, and it's like the way that they work, and the way that they work with the artist and support the artist. A lot of the people that I look at that too, or look to that vibe of, is background singers are great at that. I mean, making the artist feel comfortable, and it's just, I mean, that's kind of part of their job,
right?
You know,
right?
Yeah, it's really interesting in that there are people put on the earth that are just great at that.
Yeah,
you know, and it's like an art to watch in itself, like just being being out there and being present, but not imposing on anything.
Yeah.
It's just such an amazing
It's hard.
thing.
It's a hard juggling act.
It
also
is.
with your ego, that's another huge thing I forgot to mention is like, I marvel every night when I get off stage at what it took to pull off what I just did. And that's, and hopefully you'll get to come see Kelly's show.
That'd be great.
But there are moments where you have to summon your ego, and you got to be like John Legend, like I was talking about earlier. He was standing in this action figure pose for minutes before we went on. Like, there's a time and a place for that, and then immediately afterwards, everybody's energy is high, and you kind of want to shed some of that and get back to being a normal dude. But I've definitely seen it out of balance where people's egos aren't in balance throughout the day, or they're kind of always in that rock star mode, and that can be, that's not for everyone. And so on your gigs, you want to make sure that you're adaptable with your personality. I have a big personality, even though I'm relatively introverted guy, I just naturally have a big personality. I can't help it. So there are times when you need to know when to kind of like, maybe people need a break from you. Maybe it's time to go on that run or go do something else, especially if it's a small dressing room, everybody's in there, or if there's someone else that has a similar type of energy that you bump up against, it's cool to know when to kind of like let someone else kind of have the floor with, cutting up and jokes and when to, I think it's just being aware of all that stuff. Like you definitely want to keep everything as balanced as you can. And that's, for me, I think been the secret to longevity and also being adaptable on different gigs. Because I can hop off one gig where, this type of humor is really funny and you come on another gig and it's not, and you have to very quickly learn how to live in that world that you're in.
Yeah,
So,
it's a deep maturity, a deep maturity to understand and realize that. And like you said, read the room.
Yep.
Yeah, I totally. Yeah, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. I mean, I totally feel you on that. It's like you get off stage with like a hip hop artist, where everybody's backstage and they're just cutting up in a certain way, and then you get on the bus that night with like an older country artist, and you're around people in their 50s and 60s, and you're like, okay, this is different,
right?
But to be able
your
to
your bus playlist might have to change a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of. I guess the thing about it that, kind of running, let's run through a day. Like I'm curious. I mean, I know I share your sentiment about the running thing, that like you said before, like getting to a new town and putting on shoes and going, like that's my most favorite. The shows are great and the money's great, but that's one of my most favorite parts of touring is that you can see places. And some cities you go to. I remember I was in Kansas City once and we were plunk in the middle of this theater and it was just like super sketchy, but I'm like, screw it, man, I'm going.
Yeah.
And it's cool, you just find your spots and find your pockets, and like you take it one step further than I would. I mean, I'm very Canadian, so I don't like imposing on people. So I don't like asking.
It's not your way.
Not my way. So like getting a runner to take me somewhere, or do like I would see these beautiful places that are like miles away. I guess Ubering or whatever.
Yeah, I do plenty of Ubering too.
Ubering to get to places. Yeah, I
don't like to, but just with time constraints and stuff, sometimes you have to.
Yeah. Well, you always find the best spots, man. When I'm on your Instagram seeing it, it's just like it's always the best spots.
Oh man, thank you. Likewise, we follow each other, so
yeah.
Anytime I have FOMO too. Anytime you're doing something great, I'm like, I'm slacking. I need to. I really enjoyed the same thing. It's like, first of all, to get out from the underbelly of the arena and into the daylight is a big thing. And then also like, sometimes I'll hit Instagram up to see like, if I have a friend that is from that area, where should I run?
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and sometimes that friend is available to come guide me, up a mountain or something. And then other times,
hopefully they have a car.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes they do.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll use an app called All Trails, which is really helpful.
Love that app. Yeah.
Yeah. So the style of touring we were doing last year, which was more promo and like album promotion and single promotion, and also like corporate and private gigs. Those were a little easier to have big adventure runs because a lot of times you'd fly in day before. And you're not needed until 5, 6 p.m. the next day. So you can plot something huge and go do it. On the tour that we're on right now, because we do so much work throughout the day, The most I can really get away with normally is about an hour, sometimes 2. So I'm less inclined lately to go hit big mountains and stuff. And also we're not playing mountainous places really.
Yeah.
So, which is fine. You know, I got 2 kids at the house now, and so I'm happy to just get out and get my daily run without having to worry about being a burden for my wife.
Yeah, of course.
And the guilt of like, you know what I mean? Like now all my runs come with a little bit of a bargain that you have to, now I take my daughter a lot on the stroller because that gives my wife sort of a break.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's fun for me too, and she enjoys it.
So give me an idea, because I think this ties into it. So you're telling me that you were 19, you were kind of, you know, obviously you had that situation, and you were kind of in a space where you were partying and doing stuff. I think we talked a little bit about what brought you to running, but I think these 2 stories are probably tied in together about being healthy and being on the road and also being a runner. Like, did you come to running as a vehicle, obviously, for being healthy, but when did you kind of make a decision? I mean, you've struggled with stuff, you know, like, I mean, we all struggle with stuff.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of ultra marathoners, like if you read the trail running magazines and stuff like that, like it's majority of them have had something. Yeah. And the danger in that is that this replaces that something, that addiction. I mean, it's obviously way healthier.
Sure.
But you know, it's way healthier, but it's like, I'm curious how you view that, and if you feel like you've kind of, like, if you don't have running, like how, like, where would your head go?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah.
You know.
So yeah, straight up addictive personality. That's not really a scientific term, but
addiction is changing. I was super into that. Like,
me too.
It's your environment dictates your addiction. It's not the addiction. It's like they have like, yeah. Are you hip to that rat thing that they did where? Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
It's a cool little story.
No, I'm interested.
So there's this new study about opiates and heroin addiction, and they put a rat in a cage and put one bottle full of water and one bottle full of water with heroin in it. And obviously the rat,
good old heroin water,
tastes both. And he drinks heroin until he dies.
Yeah.
So the guy's like, well, wait a second, this rat's in a cage, you know, he's not stimulated, he's got nothing. Right. Obviously he's going to choose the heroin. Yeah. So they put rat in like rat paradise, where rat, you know, he can do all the things, he can party, there's some female rats in there to hang out with, you know. And they give him the same thing. They give him water and they give him heroin water. And he tries both, and he ends up going for the water.
Wow.
Because
he was
he's more
good.
Fulfilled in his life.
Was this the same rat or a different rat? Well, the other one died.
The other one died. So I'm sure they've done it a few times.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like you think about the opioid crisis in America, like a lot of these people live in these small towns that that they don't have work. You know, it's like there's a thing there, you know, that needs to be explored. But yeah, so I'm with you. Addiction, the rules of addiction are kind of changing. It's not the heroin that makes you addicted. It's your environment plus the heroin.
Well, and I'll add in plus your neurochemistry. So
good call. Yeah.
Because I do identify as an addict openly. Like I've talked about that with other people. So I've had struggles with nicotine. With is this like a family show, or is this like adults?
No. Yeah.
So pornography on and off throughout my life.
Of course,
and that includes just sex stuff. You know, nothing crazy, just the amount of it and my desire for it. You know, so and then with alcohol, and so what I'm learning about myself is that. I like more is more. More is better. And we were talking about this before we started the podcast. Yeah. I'm learning to settle for less, which is actually good in the context of indulging in things, whether it's like money, spending, women, it's as you get older, I believe they call this wisdom, but with all those things, I had to learn how to kind of reduce, my intake. So with
because were you in a situation where you were doing it but you were never satiated, like you never reached a point of
like basically
I guess all addicts, that's kind of the way it is. Addiction is like that.
That's how addiction is, as we talk, like I'm still trying to kick my vape habit, and it's it's nicotine vape, it's not weed, but I was a smoker when I started running. I started running probably in the one of the unhealthiest places in my life. I was like on the road playing with all these crazy music mafia people, and I was just, all I knew was partying. I thought you were supposed to do that. We're living the rock star life. Yeah. So I was chain smoking cigarettes. I mean, really chain smoker, like easily a pack and a half or 2 if I was drinking heavy that night, and that went on for years. And I started running in the middle of that. I actually started running, I think, maybe 3 or 4 years before I kind of had a come to Jesus moment about my partying and my substances and all that stuff. But running helped me take a step in the right direction, seeing what a little bit of health, introducing a little bit of health and self-care into my life felt like. So that was cool. And I actually I always want to spread that message, like with health, with diet, with, mental health awareness and meditation and stuff, like just introduce it. Don't worry. Just start. Don't worry about I still smoke. Yeah. Well, then you should work out a little bit. You know what I mean? Or maybe you should watch what you eat to kind of counterbalance your smoking habit. And down the road, you can deal with that, but start taking care of yourself, So with me, I got into running. I lost a lot of weight. I got physically very kind of more in shape. And, but it wasn't until years later that I finally started to address the drinking, the smoking. I quit drinking for 2 years, and transitioned to vaping instead of smoking cigarettes. And so I haven't smoked a cigarette in about 5 years, or 6 years now, actually. But like I said, I'm still working on other areas. I'm still working on getting off the vape pen, and I do drink these days, but I've been able to keep it more in sort of a respectable wheelhouse of alcohol use. I suspect someday that maybe I will quit that for good at some point, just because it really is not that good for you.
It's probably the worst thing.
It's probably the worst thing for you. On the front end, it's good for you. It'll lower your blood pressure, and it's relaxing and help. It's good for your heart. Blah blah blah. Although there's some studies that contest that now. Certainly, 1 or 2 glasses of something feels very easy, and nothing wrong with that. It's on the back end that it starts to get unhealthy when you're starting to stack more and more and more. And I just when I took a break and I came back, I noticed that I had a lot more control over. Because before I didn't know when to stop, and I just was I was pounding shots and blah blah blah. For me, what works is I just stick with beer, and I'm able to gauge a lot more if I'm getting a buzz, and if I have a little buzz, how serious is it, and should I put myself to bed, or should I, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm able to ride that line a lot better. And I'm not claiming to be perfect. There are definitely nights where I'm that was a little over.
Yeah.
But gone are the tremendously the 2 and 3 day hangovers, and just waking up and staring at my phone in disbelief at the things I've said and done, and worrying about my job security and stuff like that. So, and so on the whole topic of addiction as a whole, I think it is your environment. So it was also good to get out of gigs where that was acceptable.
Yeah. I
started noticing the older I got on, and the better I was playing and carrying myself, I got passed on to higher and higher levels of gigs, and gigs where it was, I was surrounded by people a little older than me, maybe, that there's no way that kind of music mafia, for lack of a better way to describe it. Think of Motley Crue. That's kind of how the music mafia world was. That kind of intense partying and stuff really doesn't have a place on most gigs. No. Let's just be honest. As professionals,
it's not at all sustainable.
It's not the look. That's not how you want to show up. And I have friends that have shown up and played a great first gig with a new artist, and then partied their asses off, and then were asked to leave. You know. So, but then again, it's not super fun to be the one that can't or doesn't.
Yeah, I can see that. That's another side of it for sure.
And I'm not advocating, if you need to be in recovery, do you, man. You need to do that for yourself. And everybody around you will understand. If you're not one of those people, there's some people I will encourage, maybe you should go out with the band and have a drink or something, go be a part of. So again, balance. If you can't stay balanced, maybe that's not for you. You know what I mean?
I think people that don't tour or don't have the experience touring think that it's a party all the time and it's a vacation, but it's your job.
It's your job,
and it's a good job.
Yeah.
It's you're not sitting in an office. I mean, You're seeing new cities every night. You're in front of a lot of people, getting your ego kind of stroked.
Yeah,
and sure. I think it can get to a dangerous place if you don't have the emotional maturity to realize that this is what pays the bills.
Absolutely.
So,
and another component of that is mental health. So I noticed with myself that if I could take a look at my 20s, there's a lot of anxiety management going on in very unhealthy ways.
A numbing of it.
Yeah. I didn't know that I was an anxiety sufferer until when I quit drinking, I got some diagnoses and stuff. And it's really helpful for me to be aware, because it helps me make decisions based on that. are you going to drink right now because you're nervous? Or are you going to smoke because you're nervous or whatever, you know what I mean? Now I can kind of run for that. Running kind of helps get some of that adrenaline out. Like, you know, what do you do with an anxious dog? Like, you run it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
You know, just let them go out there and get that adrenaline pumping and then come back down off it.
Well, they say, I guess, exercise is the best thing for depression.
For depression as well. And, you know, as we know, depression and anxiety are bedfellows. You know,
They're good old buds.
Yeah, and they could be the same thing, or they can manifest at separate times, you know. And, but we all have something. I'm not sitting here claiming to be like the craziest person.
How awesome is it though that we're talking about it? Like, I think that's fucking cool.
Yeah, I'm big on that.
I love it.
I'm big on that personally, and I'm ride or die with that, because when I kept it all secret and hid, that was when I was the unhappiest and the unhealthiest. So like, for me, not everyone needs to or wants to talk about their own issues and stuff, but I have to be real. I just got to be real.
Yeah,
like,
I'm with you, man. I appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think
a lot of
important.
people see us up there and they don't know that we're just human beings, that we have moments where we're afraid or we're sad or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
It really is a juxtaposition of insanity when you're like, when you're up in front of thousands of people, and then all of a sudden you're sleeping on a bus with 12 people.
Yeah.
And it's like
smelling
rolling.
farts.
Yeah, exactly.
There's like people's socks.
You get to know people's smells real well, and you're rolling on to the next gig, and you're pulling into like a Mapco, you know, at 2 a.m, and it's like, you know, there's so many things that people think it's glorious, and it is glorious. It's a great life. It's a great job if that's what you want, and if you're healthy doing it, because it can also do other things. But yeah, you're pulling in a Mapco, and it's like you think to yourself, do I have to use the restroom right now, or should I keep sleeping?
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you wake up knowing like that's what woke you up.
Exactly. Yeah, for people that don't know, you don't crap on the bus.
Yeah,
that's
no
the
number
rule.
2.
No number 2.
And that's an art form. That's a separate podcast, but I'm a master.
Yeah.
You gotta know.
I've learned a few things from people that have been on for a long time.
Oh yeah. I love spicy food. I love it, dude. I have a closet full of like crazy hot sauces with ghost peppers and scorpion peppers.
Oh, dude,
I love hot chicken.
Salivating.
Yeah, dude, I'm in. I like to sweat. People, you know, I like. Yeah, it's a thing, but definitely on the bus, there is not the time to indulge in those kind of things.
Yeah, you have to be responsible. You have to pace yourself.
You do, yes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, one of the things that I really loved about that article that you wrote. You know, you gave like your list of things that you think are good or healthy and stuff like that. I know that there's a lot of people that, and I've been there too on certain tours where you wake up and you can get in this cycle if you're gone long enough where you're staying up till 2, 3 in the morning, and then you're waking up the next day at 12 at 1 o'clock, and it's just, you got 3 or 4 hours before sound check, and then you just do it all over again. You know, I've been there, and I know that feeling, and it's not a good place.
Yeah.
You know, I wonder if there's a way. Like, I just don't see. I've been like the perpetual sub on so many tours, which I love.
I've done a lot of subbing too.
So
we work the hardest for the same amount of money.
Same amount of money. Yeah, learning new songs all the time.
Right.
And I've been, as I'm sure you have, I've been on. Oh man, there was one tour I was on where there were like 8 guys that were just like, they were runners, like 5K.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like 5K, like sub. Like they were dudes. And they're in great shape, and they'd wake up and they'd go running every day. But then there's those ones where you're out there and it's just not that,
Man.
And it can be, one of the things that I loved about what you said was just go running, bring a credit card and some cash, and like go get a Coke or something, and if people think that you look stupid and look funny, they're never going to see them again.
You're never going to see these people again.
And there are 2 sides to being healthy on the road. Like you said a second ago, where you're talking about, well, then there's the partiers, then there's the guys that don't party that make the partiers feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So you have to get that fine line of, I'm willing to indulge in moderation, but if
you're the type of person if you're not in recovery.
Yes, of course.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I loved about it, when you're on those tours that are not particularly athletic based, is, man, it's I don't know if you found this, but when you put your running shoes on in the morning and you're just doing it, and people start watching, and they're like, hey, where you going?
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm going for a run. And you come back a couple hours later and you're sweaty and you're hot and you feel great. And you get up on the bus to get water, to go back to the hotel to shower or whatever. Right. And they're like, where you been? I'm like, I just ran. And they are sitting in the same place they were sitting in when you left. Yeah. I mean, do you find that you've been able to kind of reach some people as far as that?
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. It is definitely, the longer you stay at it, it's almost like, because I grew up in church, and it's like letting your life, this is back in the days of like heavy evangelism, which I am not a proponent of, to be honest. But it was all about like, let your life attract followers,
And show people, don't tell people.
Exactly. Sure. So when it comes to like running and balance and taking care of yourself, people will see it. Like it usually starts this way. I was out with Leanne Rimes for 6 months or so a couple of years ago, and that was probably the most running jokes I've endured.
Nice. Oh, those are great, aren't they?
Right. So like you show up in your shorts and the whole crew's like, put some clothes on, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, dude, they're split shorts. I'm a runner.
They're throwing their insecurities at you.
Well, and that's the thing. There can be a lot of, and by the way, Leanne is a very sweet person. So I'm not talking about her.
Yeah. And Anton's doing that gig now, right?
Nesbitt. Yeah, he's killing, dude. He's such a good player. Yeah. But no, there were some crew folks that I actually don't believe are around anymore. But there was a lot of negativity as far as...
That's common. I mean, we don't need to single out that. But those jokes, like showing up to sound check after a run or whatever, it's super common.
It's super common. It's been every gig I've ever been on. Yeah. Most of it is lighthearted and it's fun, and you have to have you have to be able to laugh at yourself too.
Of course.
Because a lot of times, if I'm getting up to go run in shorts and it's in Berlin and it's 12 degrees outside, there's, for most normal people, that's not a normal thing to do for a lot of folks. So I realize that. But, I think the longer you do that stuff, the jokes start turning into interest, or they can. Not for everybody, but even on our tour, I've been able to start getting, I never thought I would get anyone to run with me, because everybody thinks, it's like that Bruce Lee effect, where like there's this legend that people would try to fight Bruce Lee in the streets just to say they fought Bruce. You know what I mean?
I've never heard that. That's awesome.
You haven't heard about that?
No.
Yeah, so like Bruce Lee was constantly getting challenged to fights because he was such a badass. Like, and I'm not saying I'm a badass. I'm just saying
they just want to get their ass whooped by Bruce Lee.
People hear you're an ultra runner, and all of a sudden, like no one will run with you because they think that means you're an elite level athlete who's running super fast, and you're always running 20 miles in all these adverse conditions and stuff. And the truth is, most days I just want to go out for a jog between 30 minutes and an hour, and I just want. A lot of times I would love some company, So, slowly I've actually been able to convince people to, I'm like, I promise you, come run with me. We'll go your pace, whatever you're comfortable with. Or what I'll do a lot of times, and this is helpful if you are looking for running buddies on the road, is a lot of people get insecure about their own pace and blah, blah, blah. Or maybe they have some body insecurity or whatever. So like I will start out with them and we'll warm up together. Like we'll do the first half mile together. And then we'll go our own way, or like rather, I'll go hit my pace and let them hit their pace, and then when we turn around, I'll see them again, and we'll take it back in together. That's been really helpful as far as dispelling some of the myths about what an ultra runner is and what I do day to day. Because like if you look on Instagram, although there's a lot of freaking dad pics on there now, but if you look on Instagram, especially like if you go back a year or so ago, you would think this guy is like, he's running 100 milers, man, and he just ran a 50K and he's got another one next week, and like that just happened to be a period where I was racing a lot of ultras. But the reality is I usually run 100 miler per year. That's usually all my schedule would permit. And usually something shorter on the ultra distance scale, which people always laugh at, like a 50K in the spring. So that's it. And when I'm not training for those things, I'm not usually running more than a few hours at a time. Like I do keep a long run on the weekend, but my daily run usually is 4 miles or 6 miles. I usually alternate 4 and 6, and maybe there'll be an 8 in the middle of the week, and then the weekend I'll do something between 12 and 20. But yeah, I think I just find that funny that a lot of times I'm like, I'm actually really lonely out there because no one will come run with me,
Which is good. I mean, like you talked about that in there. There's a time where you need to separate yourself from the people that you're on tour with. And I think that's a beautiful thing to do. Yeah. And what better way to do it than go running, or do stairs or whatever. I've done many casino stairs.
Oh yeah.
Where you see the same security guard like 5 times.
Yeah, and they're also looking at you like you're crazy.
They look like you're totally nuts.
Cigarette smoke wafting into the arena. It's like, Yeah.
Terrible.
You got to do what you can with what you have, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, yeah. Arena stairs are great. Yeah.
That's a great workout.
Totally.
Dude, doing 30 minutes of stairs is, I was doing short math on it the other day. It depends on the arena, of course, but yeah, you can get like 2,000 vertical feet in about 30 minutes or 30, 45 minutes, which is 2,000 foot climb is a proper mountain. That's like going to the summit of a lot of mountains. So,
I mean, I've heard that stairs are probably the best thing for you to do. But yeah, I haven't done the research. I'm not. I like the way that I've never. And I know you do this, but. Let's get into running. So the people that are into running, let's talk about it.
Yeah,
I don't care. You guys got to listen to this because this dude's a badass. So we're going to talk about it. But yeah, I mean, the pacing, like I'll keep a GPS on and get whatever. And I think that's cool. Like it'll tell you what you're at and where you're at. But as far as calories and mapping all that stuff out, I mean, that's just not my vibe. It's like, I just want to run. How into that are you? I mean, are you
into like data and stuff?
Like pacing and like, so when you're doing your ultras, you have goals, I would assume. Like how goal oriented are you as far as like what do you focus on? What facts and numbers do you focus on when you're preparing for your run?
Preparing for a race?
A race, yeah. Other than making food for each stop you have.
Yeah. For the 100 milers, which is really like that's my favorite race event.
Do you like that better than the 50Ks?
Oh yeah. 100 miles for your bang for your buck is about as dramatic as most people are ever going to get in their life.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you about how the miles go through and where your head's at, because I love that stuff.
It's just something so epic that most people don't get to experience, I think, anymore. Like, I think human beings, as we evolved, we used to have to be epic or you died. And now we live in a...
chasing animals. Have you seen that thing on Netflix where the
persistence hunt?
Yes.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That was freaking cool.
I don't think that on Netflix they didn't get it.
They didn't get it.
But there are if you go on YouTube, there are links, videos of the Kalahari Bush people successfully. I've seen 2 successful persistence hunts where they run the animal to death.
Yeah, like literally people are running and making the animal so tired that they can't move forward.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
There's a theory called the Running Man theory. That's actually this is like legit science. This is like Harvard researchers and stuff, and paleontologists that believe that for thousands, if not millions of years, that was the way that we got our food, our protein, because we didn't yet have advanced tools. So they see that our brains are growing and that we're taking in protein, but how are we getting the protein? There's no evidence of tools from that age. So, and I'm not a scientist, so I hope I don't botch this, but the basic, what they figured out is that was a popular form of hunting for almost all cultures at some point, was persistence hunting. So yeah, the basic cliff notes of it is we sweat really well. Most all other animals do not. So we're not the fastest. We don't have fangs or claws or teeth or anything like that. But our one weird trick is that we can sweat really well. And we can go for hours and hours and hours on our own body fat, which is another part of that, and that can get into diet, which we can talk about later. But so these people doing it to be inspired to go chase an animal to death, you have to be pretty hungry, or your family has to be getting pretty hungry. Yeah. So the modern way you run an ultramarathon is by eating lots of food, but they used to do it on no food and hardly any water. Like, how is that? And no tools to kill the animal with. Yeah. So they would run the animal. They said. They suspect most persistence hunts lasted anywhere from 4 to 8 hours or 4 to 12 hours, something like that, which is really 4 hours is for a pretty fit person. That's about your average marathon time. And 8 and 12 hours, you're starting to talk about 50-mile times, or for the elites, 100-mile time. So yeah, that has been a part of human evolution that it's not talked about a lot, and that we're just starting to find out, is that we're all kind of, as long as you have all your limbs and you don't have any serious problems, that we're all kind of adapted towards running. So you were asking about
no, let's go down there for a second, because I think that what I want this to come out, what I would love to come out of this, not want, if somebody takes however they take it, but what I would love for people to get out of this is that what you just said is, in our evolutionary history, we are built to run. I mean, how many people say, I'm going through this in life and this sucks, but I put on running shoes and I just went. It's like, that's what we're built to do. Yeah. That's what, like, it just serves so many purposes in our lives. And it's so interesting to me to listen to people talk about not wanting to get started. And I understand it. Like some people, you know, like you said, they have bad knees and that's their thing, whatever. But some people get on a bicycle and they love that. Yeah. Some people swim and they love that. Yeah. So I don't want to dissuade anybody from, like, if that's your thing, that's your thing, and it's whatever. But I think that people need to realize that, yes, that's like running is, it's almost like there's a little thing in our brain that when we do it, it kind of flicks on, like, okay, you're servicing a part of you that's deep down inside that we've had for many, many years.
Absolutely. You get a primal sense of satisfaction.
Runner's high. I mean, that's what I'm assuming that's what it is. I mean, do you experience that every time? Is that something that you...
No, never, not every time. And what runner's high even is so vague and nebulous.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But I think you said it really well is that you feel something inside you click and you're at peace, and it's like this is kind of you get
what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. So I mean, and that everybody is different, you know. So I do. Maybe you could even sum it up more as like just endurance activities, like cardiovascular endurance activities are something that we're really good at. So yeah, not everybody can run. Some people can hop on the bike or swim or whatever. Even climbing and stuff can kind of tap into some of that, but I definitely think that's something that is advantageous for humans. And look, it just balances me, and it feels great to me. And everybody should do what they want to do. But if I could be dogmatic about it, and that was acceptable, I would probably be more so. But being dogmatic about stuff is not always the way to go.
Yeah, of course, I understand that.
Yeah.
So I mean, like you said, you need it's yeah, of course. So yeah, let's go from that. I just wanted to bring it up in this situation of there's so many people that are scared to do it. Yeah. You know, like my mom, she was, at the time, she was like 51, 52. And she just started like running. And it's the happiest I've ever seen her, you know? And she started by running for 10 seconds. Yep. You know, and then 20 seconds. Yeah. And then the next day, I'm starting to really live in this world of having a baseline in life a lot. And you talked about it earlier, where you have a baseline of don't expect yourself to just be this thing way down. Just like start somewhere and start at that spot. Yeah. So it's like if your baseline is running for 10 seconds, then that's your damn baseline. Yeah. You know, it's like the people that just like, I got to go to the gym. And if they don't go 6 days a week, they feel like they're failing, you know, but just start with one. Start
where you are is, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like be realistic about where you are. Like I just got back into strength training. I used to be really big on strength training and my band's heard me joke about this a lot, but like I was very proud that at a certain point I was doing 3 sets of 50 push-ups a day. You know, I was doing like thousands of crunches and blah, blah, blah. And I was running, 5-10 miles a day, blah, blah, blah. I was killing it.
That's great, yeah.
I was also single and didn't have a family.
Yeah, you don't have 2 kids and a wife.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But
now you just put the baby on your legs and just do
right.
crunches.
That's my crunches. Yeah. It's just rocking the baby. But no, I mean, now I'm getting back into my body weight strength training. And, I started the other day and I was trying to hit my sets of 20, which was always kind of a staple, bar for me. 20 push-ups, 3 sets, 20 push-ups. And dude, I was sore for a week, so I couldn't do any more push-ups. So I blew it out the first day. Yeah. So I had to realize that's not where I was. Yeah. And had to circle it back and start back at, I think I started back with like sets of 15, which Lester recommended. He's more strength training expert than I am. But so now I'm back to my 20s. But it just took me a few weeks, and I had to give myself some grace to go through the process. If you start any fitness habit, or if you're getting, if you're starting to practice a new skill or a new side of your instrument, or if it's sight reading or whatever, you got to start where you are and give yourself grace and
don't be so damn hard
cut out all that American bullshit of like go hard or go home. No pain, no gain. Like that's not wise. Yeah. Sometimes pain is like you don't need to be. If you're maxing out and you can't work out for a week, or if you practice sight reading until 3 a.m. and you don't ever want to do it again, how has that been helpful for you?
Absolutely.
So you have to, and I have to remind myself of this because of my addictive nature.
I'm the same way.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like if I didn't run most days that week, then I'm not a runner or something,
Yeah.
And it's just not true. There's entire periods in life, I just had a kid 4 weeks ago today, that, I came home and I didn't run for 4 days while we were in the hospital and stuff. Like, I think when I was younger, I would have tried to make a way to do that and been bargaining with my wife who's sitting there holding a new, you know what I mean? And that's not healthy either. So
Well, it sounds to me like I think it's okay for this, but I think running may have been, and everybody has these. When we talked about them before we went live, but like the distractions, like the distractions of life. And I think that if running can start out as a distraction for somebody and then they find out that they love it, then that's good too.
Yeah.
Like let it start out as a distraction.
Sure.
Because it's way better for you than, heroin.
or tipping that bottle of Jack Daniels up.
Jack or whatever, it's like just start somewhere. And if you like it, you like it, But if you're running a couple miles or going for a walk for a couple miles at night instead of doing something bad, I mean, that's a thing, totally a thing. And to give yourself credit, like if you just did that one time a week, then that's cool. And it distracted you one time a week from that bad thing, start there.
If you found that was a good dose for you of that positive energy, then that's all you need. That's cool. Most people, I think, realistically will want to get out and do whatever it is you're trying to do. Start with 2 or 3 days a week, I think is, a good...
Yeah, is that what you recommend?
Yeah, because I do think there's something to be said for instead of doing... I have a friend that will remain anonymous that she doesn't work out, and then when she does, she goes so hard that she'll go hard for like 2 weeks, and then she'll stop working out, and she won't work out for another 4 months. You know what I mean? Wow. I think it'd be better to cut it into very small pieces and have more of those pieces per week. So like, instead of doing 2 miles for your first walk or run, like you said, walk a half a mile or maybe walk a quarter mile and run a quarter mile and then do that. Let yourself recover the next day and then do that the next day, the day after rather, so you do it maybe every other day for a second. But yeah, I mean, I do think there is something to be said for, to get it to stick, to have some consistency to maybe whatever this activity is, maybe do it a couple times a week instead of one huge chunk per week. But we could talk about like all the permutations of how to get started with fitness habits and stuff. That you can bat that back and forth forever.
Yeah. I understand.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about, man, I want to dive into this ultra stuff. So I mean, I've never run that distance. I've never even ran a marathon. So I'm not even there. I mean, I think the longest I've ever done is 16 or 18 miles. So I know what that felt like on my body, and I've from what I understand, there's certain walls that you hit when you run a marathon. And I'd love to talk to you about what that feels like. And then obviously walls that you would hit in an ultra too. So when you prepare for an ultra, so how many stops are there typically, like for food stations and stuff like that? So you have to prepare food for each thing, and they're all set up, and
so
like how many hours, like what was your time on this last ultra that you just did?
My time for my last one was 26:45, I think 26 hours 45 minutes, and that was a 100-miler. And typically in most ultras there's going to be an aid station, we call it, with food and water. On average, I would say every 6 miles, and that sometimes is 4 miles and sometimes it's 10 miles. But I would say on average every 6 miles. That's usually how they try to space them apart. So on a mountain trail, for a mid-pack runner, you can expect to see an aid station about every 2 hours.
Every 2 hours. And are you carrying a water pack? Are you carrying like hiking sticks? Like how does that work?
It really depends on the distance of the race and what kind of terrain you're dealing with. So if it's a mountainous 100-miler or a 200-miler, which is now it's a popular thing that's coming up. Especially for those 200s, you're going to have hiking poles with you because the amount of vertical you're going to be doing. A lot of trail races are in the mountains, so it does help to have poles for when you're...
Is that alleviating the muscle strain of your hamstrings and pulling? Okay.
Yeah, actually, trekking poles for hiking uphill in races is huge because it turns you into a quadruped.
Yeah, of course.
So you ever go running with your dog and you notice you're like trying to get up this hill and your dog is pretty casual about it. Because it has 2 points of contact on the ground at all times.
Yeah.
even while it's in motion.
And 4 muscles engaging as
exactly.
4 legs engaging.
It has 4 limbs. So for us on uphills, trekking poles make a lot of sense. Not everybody likes them. Some people like to put their hands on their knees, and some people run all the hills. Some people don't hike at all.
So hands on your knees, pushing down to get that leverage.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, and that's a really powerful technique. When I first started ultra running, I assumed everybody ran every step.
Yeah.
When in reality, only a few elites do that, and not even the ones that win. Really? All the time. Yeah. So a lot of the guys that win and girls that win are they're doing a fair amount of hiking. It's just that because you're not going to run up these hills that much faster than you're going to hike up them, especially the steeper they get. It's really all about grade. So the steeper a hill is, that's when you'll want to hike it. The mellower it is, you can run up the whole thing. I've run up mountains in California that were at like a low grade. You can run all the way to the damn top, and it's hard, but it's not impossible. Yeah. Whereas there's 200-foot hills at Percy Warner Park that I really have to be in the mood to run up. Yeah. You know the hills I'm talking about. Yeah. Like on a good day, yeah, sure, but I don't always feel like running those. Yeah. Some people use trekking poles, hydration. A lot of people, there's various ways to carry water, whether it's in a bottle or it's in a hydration pack. A lot of ones specifically for running will have 2 bottles in the front instead of like your traditional like hiking camelback type one. But they'll also accommodate that bladder if you like it. Or you see people using handheld bottles that have straps on them that stick to your hands.
That would drive me nuts, I think.
Yeah, I've experimented with all of them, and it's hard to say one's better than the other. The packs they make now with the bottles and stuff, they're so soft and you hardly notice they're there. And
they're not jiggling around. They're
not really, no. And honestly, it'd be hard to not say that's probably the most superior way to do it. And that's pretty much the standard now.
Okay. The front water packs.
Yeah, whether it's a bladder,
the bladder too. Okay.
Yeah, some people use both the front and the back, or some people just use the bladder and they put more. That way, they have more pockets up front for items and cell phone and blah blah blah. But yeah, that's kind of how that works. The food it's provided for you at most races. Some races are totally run self-supported, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, that's neat.
But yeah, they'll provide you with a little bit of food. You always want to be carrying your own because you need to keep eating about 300 calories per hour, especially for a 100-miler. And then you also have drop bags that with other necessities that say you're having blister problems, you can send a bag to mile 50 waiting for you that has new pair of shoes, a blister kit, maybe a change of socks or whatever. So you do try to think of things that might go wrong, and you send bags out to mile 40, mile 70, mile 85, whatever. And then other than that, you rely on what's in your pack and what's at the aid stations.
Yeah. So you said, you talk about nutrition quickly about that. We were talking before about how you're kind of been into the intermittent fasting.
Yeah.
So going 16 hours without food. And you said that helped you in your last run.
It did. I want to make sure that I articulate that this is my choice. Yeah. And everybody's body.
Is it controversial?
It can be. Anytime you get into diet, man, it's super controversial because there's so many views of what a healthy diet is, and that's only in America, let alone in different parts of the world. Where,
of course,
there are Sherpas that live on just yogurt, and that's totally healthy diet for them. They're less ill than we are. So,
or the carnivore diet, that's fascinating to me. Some of those people that do that.
I think the thing we all lose sight of is that we evolved to be omnivores. I used to do the paleo thing. Then a lot of that got dispelled, where they found Paleolithic remains of humans that ate all wide variety of shit, Yeah. So, and then, there's definitely healthy ways to eat grains and dairy, and some things work for some people and don't work for others. Gluten doesn't work for a lot of people. It works fine for me. I just choose now to do more of the ketogenic thing. And so, yeah, keto is an emphasis on healthy fats and a moderate amount of protein and a small amount of carbohydrates. And for first of all, in my daily life, for me, it's worked because it's kept me a little leaner. It's helped my blood pressure stay a little lower. That was one of the main selling points for me, was when I noticed that my blood pressure had gone down. And then for my athletic life, it really did. I started out trying to disprove the diet because my wife was going on it, and she had a holistic doctor recommend it to her. And since I had dabbled in paleo for a few years, I was like, well, I'll go with you. Let's see how this feels, I ended up sticking with it for now. It's been almost a year, and it just resonated with me. And I found the results to be, for my body, so positive that it was like, well, I guess I will kind of do that. So for racing, man, I didn't have to eat that much in my 100-miler, and my energy was uber consistent, the most consistent it's ever been. And I never had one wall.
No kidding.
I've never had that experience in 100 miles where there really was no low moment. There was a moment between mile 70 and 85 where I was pretty tired, and I was over it a little bit, but I was still positive, and my energy was pretty much fine. And to get to that point, I did a lot of, I did the intermittent fasting, and along with the intermittent fasting, and this may seem kind of hardcore, but you're training for an ultra marathon. At that point, I think it's okay to go a little hard on these kind of things. And what I got into was fasted long runs. So I trained myself to get up to about 20 miles with no food. And I did that, and on an empty stomach as well.
Wow.
So you wake up on an empty stomach, you haven't eaten since 6 or 8 p.m. the day before. You go run 20 miles before you eat any calories whatsoever. I did that 2 or 3 times successfully, and then one of the times I had like a really bad experience. It was a hot day, and I ended up getting heat exhaustion. Still don't know.
Was that a water issue?
I still don't know to this day whether the fasting was to blame for that or not. But I would say in my training, I did probably 6 runs up to 20 miles that were fasted, and I had one unpleasant experience. Like I said, if you're going to try this, I would go extremely slow. So I started with a fasted run of 4 miles. And I got up to
I see, yeah.
Or think about it more with time. So I started with an hour fasted, and then I worked my way up to 2 hours fasted, 3 hours fasted, 4 hours, and then 4.5 hours fasted.
Oh, that's the persistent hunting we're talking about. With they doing that on an empty stomach.
Yeah. And we weren't around then. They could have been grabbing handfuls of berries, or they had some, dried the Tarahumara Indians carried pinole with them, but certainly not significant. They weren't having Cliff Bars 10 minutes before they took off. You know what I mean?
Glycogen gels.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. There may have been some fruit involved and stuff, but I've seen some of the way the Kalahari guys did it. Homie had a jug of water and some old ass Reebok shoes that were I'm sure were secondhand, and a skirt, like a loincloth. And he ran this springbok to death, and it was
See, that already gives me nightmares of chafing.
Yeah. I don't know how, but I'm sure they figured out take some lard and
just do it. Yeah,
we are an enterprising species, man.
We sure are. Go buy the Body Glide for $10 at 99 cents.
Yeah, Body Glide is a must, by the way, if you get into running.
Yeah,
especially if you're not a twig, which I'm not, and Tyler's not. Although you certainly have. I think you've lost a lot of weight since you started running.
I have, yeah, for sure, definitely.
No, my nature, I have a chubby nature.
Yeah.
So I got big thighs, and I got to have that Body Glide.
I've been, dude. I did a gig. I was out for 4 days with a band, and I didn't bring Body Glide. And on the second day, I went for a long run where I got out. Probably 5 miles. I was trying to do a 10 miler that day, and I got out 5 miles, and I was like, oh
no! And you got to run back.
I played that gig, and it was a particular gig where there was a ton of dance moves and jumping and stuff like that. I was almost crying. I was in so much pain.
How bad was the shower?
Oh, and it hits
when that hot water hits you.
Oh man!
You do that. Goofy.
I was walking it was not
cowboy.
Good. Like a cowboy. I remember I was walking down this hill on the way back from a run, and a buddy of mine saw me walking, and he was a runner too. Mm-hmm. And that was that tour that there was a bunch of runners on that tour. And he saw me walking down the hill after my run, and he's like, "You are in trouble."
my buddy Caleb, great ultra runner, great friend of mine, and a fantastic drummer. He was with Brett Eldridge for a long time. Caleb didn't know about Body Glide until well after his 4th 50 miler.
Oh my god!
I was like, "Dude, you've never used Body Glide?"
And you never had an issue?
I mean, I think once he used it, his report back was like, "Yeah, that's a cool thing." I think I'll use that from now on.
Yeah, it's a lifesaver.
It's funny all the stuff you have to learn the hard way.
Yeah,
and I've learned a lot the hard way. That's the only way I learned.
What about feet and shoes? I've watched everything that I've watched about ultra marathoners, and some of the people that are breaking records on the Netflix specials and stuff. It's when your feet get screwed up, you are screwed.
You're done.
Yeah. So is it when you drop those packs off, is it dry socks? Is it a change of shoes? I know you're endorsed by, is it
Hoka 11.
Yeah.
And it used to be One, which is a Polynesian.
Oh, cool.
Some sort of Hawaiian word or something. But Hoka 11, they make great shoes. And yeah, it really depends on what you're experiencing. So if I don't have to change shoes, I won't change shoes or socks. In my last ultra, I only switched socks out never changed shoes because I was trying to keep my aid station times down to like 2 minutes or under.
Okay.
Because you can, if there's, in a 100 miler, there can be 25 aid stations.
Yeah.
And if you spend 5 minutes at all of those.
Having coffee.
I'm not great at math, but what is that? That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
So
I'm not even going to try.
No, I'm not even I'm not going to go for that on a podcast. But but the bottom line is like, you do want your feet to be as good as you can keep them. I've had whole 100-mile races where I didn't have a single blister. I use Swiftwick socks. Those work well for me. A lot of people put like either a lubricant between the sock and your skin. Like Body Glide works great for me. I can usually go
on your heel or just like on your whole foot?
Wherever your problem spots are.
Okay.
And you have to learn those the hard way.
Yeah, I totally dig that.
But usually I put them on the sort of the side of my big toe, that kind of joint where most people will get a bunion.
Yeah.
I put it right there, and I'll put it in between my toes, on the ball of my foot. I never have heel problems, so I usually don't do that. And if I'm not having any problems, I won't change anything. If I am having issues, like my previous 100-miler last year, I got trench foot, which is about as bad as your foot issues.
So were you running through water on that one?
It was a race in Kentucky, and it was a really humid.
So sweat did it?
Really humid couple of days, and it was like modest temperatures. It's like 70 degrees. So yeah, you're dripping sweat from mile one. Like the whole race, you're absolutely soaked in sweat.
Damn.
And so trench foot is this kind of condition where you hear about these expeditions into like the Amazon and stuff getting cut short because folks got trench foot. It's basically when your feet become macerated to the point where the bottom layer is just a huge blister. And it looks like when your hands and feet get pruny in the pool or in the tub when you were a kid. It's like that, but on steroids, and it gets real. It's so painful you can barely walk on it. And I came down with this, not to toot my own horn, but this is real talk. I came down with it. I noticed it at around mile 35. I took my shoes off at mile 40 and saw what I saw, and I was like, oh shit. Yeah. I had trained all year for this race. Just barely got into the race, and my wife's like, do not come home without the buckle that you get when you win. She's like, you're coming home with a buckle. She's supportive, but she doesn't really love these things. Yeah. So I was already kind of like, I needed to make sure I stuck to my plan and got it done. Yeah. And when I noticed that my feet were fucked, basically, I had some hard thinking to do. It was like, how bad do I want this? Wow. I kept trying to find solutions, from powders to new socks, new shoes. They were just beyond, they needed to dry out. They needed to be sat in front of a fire for like 2 or 3 hours, and I couldn't do that and still cross the finish line in time. So I had to keep going. My buddy Caleb was pacing me through that, and God bless him, man. That was the longest night of my life. I felt like I was in hell. I was just howling out in pain, literally every other step, and I felt like I was in hell. Like I can't imagine. Wow. It was like a nightmare I couldn't get out of. I could drop out, but
yeah. Did it go away? Like, I mean, you had over 60 miles left.
No, it never went away during the run. It got worse because towards the end of the race there were like.
I mean, did your body send a signal to be like, that's enough? Like we can't take any more of this pain?
It would come in and out as far as my awareness of it.
Okay.
It hurt the whole time, but like any, I'm trying to think if you've ever had a bad injury. Like I broke an ankle once, 10, 12 years ago, and on the hours between you getting treated at the hospital, you notice like the pain. You're aware of it more at sometimes than others. That's kind of how it was. Mm-hmm. That's your body's own way of managing pain, which, by the way, in an ultra, you are constantly doing. So like your knee might be bothering you for 5 or 10 miles, and then you're not aware of it anymore, and it switches to something else. So, It's rare that you run a whole one and you don't feel anything that like sucks.
I've had that a little bit. Like you'll get out and you'll be kind of like your hamstring will be like, oh, this sucks, and then you're a mile and a half or 2 miles in, and it's kind of like then it's gone.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a warm up thing too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's interesting that you have. So the pain, like your knee is still a problem, but your mind is like, okay, well, there's now a bigger problem. Is that what the vibe is?
Yeah. And I just think the body's amazing. Like it won't let you go past what you can handle. Really, there's never been like a pain so bad.
Trench foot might be for me. That might be the end.
It was awful, dude. But there's never been a pain so bad that it killed someone. The pain itself.
True. Good point.
Not the actual condition.
Good point.
You know what I mean? That's tricky. Like you have these guys, these SEALs and stuff that train to deal with torture. I can't even imagine. You heard of David Goggins?
Oh, I love him. Yeah.
Oh my God, what a badass dude.
The way that he talks about the manipulation of his brain and the manipulation of how he can tolerate pain and push through it, like some of the crazy stunts that he's done, pull-ups and push-ups, and like then he'll like finish and he'll be like, yeah, my shoulder was totally screwed, but I went 500 more,
Yeah, man. And he's careful in how he, he's usually not advocating people do these crazy stunts he's doing because he's trained to do them. But
well, you would know more about his process than I would for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, what is he tapped into that nobody else has tapped into? Well, I'm sure people have tapped into it, but he's just more vocal about it.
I think David. By the way, if you're listening and you haven't heard of David Goggins, it's spelled Goggins. He's a black dude, Navy SEAL. He was actually a Navy SEAL, Special Forces, and I want to say like Green Beret. I might botch that, but he was the only person at that time that had been all three at the same time. His whole story is he started out obese, depressed, low self-image, low self-esteem.
Terrible childhood, too.
Terrible childhood.
Yeah.
Turned his life around through embracing suffering and learning how to control it and getting his shit together. That's the beautiful part of his story is like he was able to use his mind to make decisions to change his life. You know what I mean? And that's so powerful. Like we can do that too. We were talking about some of my story earlier. Like there was a time where I had to decide to grow the fuck up. Like I was just tired of living like a child. Now I sit here, have a nice house, have a family and a great job. And if I hadn't been able to be self-aware and tighten some areas up, I wouldn't be sitting here on your podcast. So David has tapped into that way more than I ever will. He's just he's got a unique talent for being able to focus his mind and suffer and deal with stuff.
Yeah.
We do live in a culture of I'm complex in that I embrace like self-love, self-care, knowing when enough is enough and when to not beat yourself up and all that. But to balance that, there's also times where you have to kick your own ass and you have to do the hard stuff and go through the darkness. Like there's times I just had what I would call a pretty whack show for me the other night with the Kelly team. And that's usually in your own head a little bit. Some of it was very blatantly, like I had my ears went out and it was just kind of a rough night. And that happens. Everybody has that happen. But the next day, even though I've been playing these songs for a long time, I made myself go practice for 2 hours for the show and play every single song and work through stuff because that's what I had control of. You can only do what you can do, but I had control of doing that little practice round. And I had a great show the next night. A lot of that's mental, but it helped my mind know that I had done the work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah, Goggins is amazing. I think he's not a perfect person. He's not to be worshipped or anything like that, but he is an amazing human being. If you ever like need an inspiration to get up off your butt and change something in your life, whether it's an addiction problem or mental health issues or eating or sex or not working out, whatever your problem is, like it's really cool to go listen to and read David's podcast and his books and stuff where he talks about how he learned to change his life around from being someone that he detested to someone that he was proud of.
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty cool to hear that. It's pretty cool to hear that you have tapped into some of that too with the suffering. And I think anybody that's going to run 100 miles is going to have to tap into that. I mean, did you tap into it in a hard way, or did you just tap it? I mean, was that Trenchfoot story? I mean, is that where you're like, oh wow, I'm capable of X and Y now?
That was that was definitely like, I mean, life is so littered with those little opportunities to suffer forward or fail forward, as they say.
Oh, that. Yeah. I've never heard that.
Yeah. Where it's like,
fail forward.
Or, like having a child. Like, I'm a man. We don't have children, right? But watching your wife go through it.
I can only imagine, man.
Or losing a job. There's all these things that usually, having a marriage dissolve or a relationship. There's usually hardship that can actually help you in your life. You know what I mean? Or it can be a beautiful thing in the end. And a lot of times we're so afraid of those things that are hard or that are painful. And I might sound like one thing on this podcast, but I'm the biggest wuss. I mean, I told you I have an anxiety condition. I'm scared of everything. There's days where I'm scared to go outside my house or interact with people. But certainly the more you put yourself out there and learn things aren't as scary or as painful as you think they are, and even if they are painful, that you lived to tell about it, I mean, you're better for it. That's probably low key what my obsession with ultra running is. It's like, it's a healthy playground for me to exercise all my fears and agonies and stuff. And I come away triumphant for the most part. And
finishing it is triumph enough.
Yeah. I think if you finish an ultra, you won. Even if you tried it, I think you won.
Yeah.
You know? If you ever get into running and the road scene or the marathon, you know, doesn't appeal to you or it's lost its luster, like I encourage people to check out ultra running. It's not something for crazy people. It's something that everybody can do. Like I said, I think we all can do it.
Yeah.
I've seen people. I have a friend named Myrna Valerio. She's actually really famous Instagram runner and sort of motivational person. Also a black woman. And if I sound like I'm being Afrocentric, you know, I'm always charged up when I see people of different colors and stuff in the athletic world and not in the athletic world, in the running and outdoor space. That's not typically, other than Kenyans.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a contradiction.
Yeah.
Because Kenyans are the best by far runners on the planet, and Ethiopians I'll throw in there too. In running and in hiking, especially in America, that can be seen as sort of a more of a Caucasian thing to do. And I've encountered that on the trails and in mountains and stuff where I've actually literally had run-ins where people like had to do a double take, or I had one guy say like, I was on a mountain in Montana and he stopped and was like, we had talked a couple times because I passed him and I went up to the summit and I came back down. He was an older dude. And he was like, he was kind of looking at me and he's like, boy, you sure got some sun while you were out here, didn't you? And I just died laughing. I was like, he didn't know that I was black. Like, it took him a second to realize it was a black dude out here running up this mountain with hip hop music playing out of his phone. I was like blasting like Kanye West or something.
Nice.
Anyways, Myrna is amazing. She is, you know, a black woman who is also like a full-figured, curvy person, and she runs ultra marathons. She's run 100-milers, and she does a lot to fly in the face of stigma around people of various body shapes and sizes. Like, you know, she's out here killing it, running ultra marathons, and she's active every single day. And she probably will never be a twig. And it makes people think like, well, if it's only your eating habits and stuff, then, or if you're not being active, then maybe she would be a twig.
Yeah.
It kind of makes you think like, maybe some people really are genetically predisposed to being a certain shape or a certain size or a certain color. Like, so I'm all about. I forget how I got into talking about Myrna. She's just amazing.
Well, I mean, you're talking about. I think that goes back to the idea that we can all take that chance and we can all do it. And I mean, I like the passion of you wanting to get into ultra running, and it's like anybody can do it.
Anybody can do it, right? It not, you know. I say that some people are missing limbs. Caveat:
Yes.
I've seen people with missing limbs out there doing it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that everyone with a missing limb can do it, but it depends on your prosthesis and where it's been cut and your desire to do so and all that. Yeah. But
one of my favorite things about that, and listening to Courtney DeWalter, is that her name, who won the Moab 238, 240, yeah, and she won by 10 hours, you know, and it's like overall, like all the men and everything, and that's an interesting thing about it is like women, and I guess the science behind it is women have a higher pain tolerance because they're able to give birth and men are not.
At least that's a theory.
Yeah, which is why they can do this, you know, and deal with that kind of pain over men. It's like women are just better at it than men.
I would say women are better than men, period. But
yeah, pretty much. I would have to agree with you on that.
Like watching my wife take care of these kids, dude, it's like, I thought I was cool. I'm going to do a podcast today, and she's actually doing the hard stuff, and she's really... but yeah, I think women are amazing, and seeing them in endurance sports is even cooler because for something about there's a governor on what the different sexes can do at lower distances, right? Mm-hmm. The Olympic marathon, if it was a unisex event, that's why they have a men's and a women's race. Like, you know, at that level. Scientifically, it is very difficult for a woman to compete with a man at 26.2 miles at the elite level. You take that they're amazing in their event, but you take that to 100 miles, and women win all the time. And lately, they're winning overall. Every week, I hear a new race where I hear about a woman winning overall. I get so hyped anytime that happens.
Yeah, it's so cool.
It's amazing.
I was blown away listening to her talk.
Yeah. I met her at the Nashville airport.
Did you really?
Dude, it was so crazy. And this is kind of maybe an intersection back into music, but I had my 100-miler, Pinhoti, was coming up in a week. And I had my bass on my back, and I was going out with Kelly team and going through TSA. And I saw this really tan, really skinny woman, and I was like, she had like recovery. I know what like recovery shoes look like sandals. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And she was kind of limping a little bit, and I was like, dude, that's Courtney DeWalter. And I was like, yo. So I kind of went up to her.
You had to go talk to her.
Yeah, I was like, hey, Courtney. And so I'm wearing like leather jacket and got a bass, and she knows she's in Nashville. Mm-hmm. And she was probably, I don't know what was going through her mind, but she had been being like, who is this dude like coming up to me? And I was like, yo, can I get a picture, please? Like, I'm a huge fan of yours. And she just had this funniest grin on her face. Like, this is, and she had just started being kind of famous, you know.
She's so unassuming.
She was the nicest person, dude. Yeah. She was so cool. She asked me how my training was going and, you know, wished me a good race. And we talked about ultrarunning for a second, and just super cool. But
I love when Rogan asked her, said, you know, what do you do to eat to prepare? And she goes, I love nachos and beer and burgers. And I'm just like, man.
Yeah, she keeps it real, dude.
Yeah, she does not.
That's the funny thing too, is like with food and with training, and even back to music with practicing and all that stuff. Like, there's a famous phrase I learned when I was doing more like mental health recovery stuff of who's to say. And that really is like, who's to say, back to diet as well, like, who's to say my diet's better than someone else's diet? Who's to say that, you know, some people don't practice their instrument and they're great, you know? Yeah. I would think it'd be better to practice your instrument. I don't practice that much either. I wish I practiced more, but I don't think I'm a bad player. So who's to say you have to eat
I love that.
the healthiest food, you know, as an endurance runner? Again, I'm not advocating to not eat the health food. I'm just saying, like, life is life, and some people eat crazy, terrible things, and they look amazing. You know, some of the most amazing looking people I've ever seen, like, have the worst diets. Yeah. You know, we've all seen that. So who's to say? This is what works for me.
Yeah, I love that. So when's your next, what's the plan for your next 100?
My next 100 is going to be in 2020, because I told my wife I would take this year off. Yeah. Cool. So she said I can do any
Probably
event.
good reason. I mean, two kids in the house.
It's the kids, the house. Yeah. There's a potential move this summer.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, and that's all kind of coming at us quick in this tour, and this all is happening in the same like 6 months, and it's just life is telling me, or you know, God or the universe or whatever is telling me to just be happy with what I have for a second. Like, I've done 4 back-to-back, 4 years in a row. I've done 100 miles or more, and I'm actually kind of intrigued. I'm kind of excited to take a year off from like serious training. And she said if I want to, and I've been running ultras just long enough that I'm not getting too cocky, but she says if I can do any event that it takes less than a day to complete, like it starts and ends on the same day, and that I don't have to train for like crazy. So for me, something like a 50-miler or even maybe 100K, which is like 62 miles, I'm not going to say you can just phone that in, but the more experienced you get, it's a long day on the trails. It's not, you know, I won't be as probably competitive, but I could probably go suffer through that right now if I had to.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, you know, it's a thing. It's a thing to look forward to and a thing to get excited about. I think you always have to have that.
Yeah, I need goals, man. So I'll probably do something when we get where we're moving. I might look at the local terrain and the local race culture and see what they have to offer, and probably look at something in the fall that is just super low key.
Nice.
Yeah, something I'd like to have the kids at the finish line kind of thing.
That's cool.
Yeah.
It'd be so cool for them to see you and understand it.
Yeah.
See you like at 100 miles, you know.
Yeah. I did my daughter came to a 50K, the Music City Trail Ultra I did last year, and she was like 1.5, I think. But, you know, definitely she was conscious, and she was super excited seeing me run up, and she was like clapping her hands, and like, it was dope, dude.
What an experience.
Oh, yeah, it was amazing. So I would love to, she'll be even older by then. She'll probably be 3.5, 3-ish by the time I run another one. So
that's awesome. Yeah, a lot of professional sports figures, you know, like their kids grow up and they never get to see them. Like, I'm a big hockey fan, so that's what I'm thinking of. A lot of their kids never get to see them play hockey because they're retiring now in their early 30s.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So it's, when you get to see the kids and they're watching and they really understand.
Right.
Like, you know, daddy's doing that.
Yeah.
You know, that's super cool.
It is cool. I grew up with a very inspiring dude.
Yeah.
You know, so much so that like we said, it's almost sometimes problematic. Like, he's such an amazing man that definitely, I would love to be problematically inspiring for my children.
That's awesome. I love that. Oh, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So, dude, how do people find you on Instagram so they can see all your cool stuff?
Yeah.
I want people to know.
My handle is just my name. I got in the Instagram game before it was cool to have like all this fancy names. So it's just at Kyle Whalum. It's KYLEWHALUM. And I'll be real with you. I post. It's about half about music. I'll say it's a third about music. It's a third about running, and it's a third about just family life and being a dad and just like silly shit. And
it's truly, I mean, we talk about inspiring figures, but I mean, I think that you need to, you don't need to give yourself credit. I'm going to give you credit for the fact that it's like when I see you in another city and you're running and you kind of give your synopsis about what you've done. I mean, that's a beautiful thing, and I think people pay attention to that.
That's cool.
I love it. I mean, I have the same thing. I look at you in those cities, like especially when you're out west, and I'm just like, God damn it, I want to
I want to be on that mountain.
But not only that is like I know you got a show that night, and I know this you took time to plan this, and you're not hungover, and you're not feeling like crap, and you're doing something that is good for you, but also is good for people to see you do, and be like, this is the kind of thing you can do, if you choose to do it,
if you want to do it, and if if you're balancing the scales. There's definitely no one's happy all the time. No one's always balanced. In fact, part of balance is accepting periods of imbalance.
Absolutely,
right. So, like getting ready for our tour, there was a month of like a lot of people were pulling all nighters, and it was out of balance for sure. But that got us into the tour, and then the scale will balance in spring when I'm a lot more free.
Yeah,
so that's the thing. But certainly give yourself grace in all your pursuits. But know when it's time to crack the whip on yourself and turn some things around. You do have the power to look within and make changes in your life. And no one will do it but you, actually.
Yeah, and I'd love to close on reiterating the story that you said. You had a bad show, and the next day, you didn't take it for granted. You spent 2 hours before sound check, and you went through the show.
Yeah.
I mean, that in itself is a professional and somebody that will always be that and work and set a great example for people.
That's awesome.
It's like if you have a bad show or if you have a bad run, it's like don't sit there and take that for granted because it can be gone. Your knees might go out tomorrow, and again I'll knock on wood.
Yeah, we'll knock on the old table. This is a really nice table.
Thank you. But it's like you can't take it for granted.
Yep.
So, and when you get an injury, you feel that. It's like I fucked my left leg up in Chicago, and it's like I couldn't run for a while. And then that first run, it was like, oh,
there's the gratitude.
There it is.
Yep. Now I'm grateful.
Exactly. And it's the same thing with music. It's like we are so lucky to get to do what we do.
Yep.
And find ways to be positive out there for yourself and be healthy. And I think that you set a beautiful example for that. And I'm inspired by it.
Dude, so I'm inspired by you too, my man. You're a great guy to host this podcast because the admiration is mutual.
Well, I appreciate that.
It's fun to come do it.
It's been fun, and thank you so much for doing this, dude.
Absolutely.
We'll do it again. We'll do it again as you're training for. Well, no, we got to do it before that. We'll do it before that. But if you're gonna train for a 50K, I want to dig into that.
Maybe we'll do a yearly check-in. Hopefully, you'll be training for one too by then.
Maybe.
Hey,
you never know.
Sweet.
Thanks, dude.
All right.
Watch this heavy heart of mine turn this water into wine. Light your match and let it glow, so I know my way home. One more game of tic-tac-toe. You be X and I'll be you. Fall in love like dominoes, then I'll come back home. If I can't find you, go get lost in the simple things. Might I remind you, chase your tail and dream those dreams. One more glass to set me free. Forget right past what's in front of me. I'll be fine, they tell me so, 'cause I know my way home.